Welcome to our Friday edition of Anglican Unscripted. This is episode 106, and you're watching two guys who, we love Friday. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Conger. And today's July 18th, 2014.
I'm going to get a sip here. No, I'm not advertising for Dunkin' Donuts. George and I are still in what we call recovery. 2 weeks ago, we were in Latrobe, Pennsylvania for the ACNA Assembly, where they had the conclave and they chose the next Archbishop of the ACNA. And covering these events takes a lot out of us as reporters, especially as a cameraman slash live streamer slash interviewer slash put all the videos together. George is pumping out 6-7 stories a day, and it's a lot to cover. 900 people on a campus trying to get all these stories and find out what's going on. Now, covering an assembly, I've just discovered, is a lot different than covering a general convention in the Episcopal Church. A general convention in the Episcopal Church is made up of activists and what's the topic of the day. George, I didn't go to the last general convention. You were there. The first thing you always want to post when you go to a general convention is a picture of the transgendered bathroom.
That was fun. And general convention is fun
Yes.
for a reporter.
Mm-hmm.
There's always something exciting and interesting to discuss and talk about. See, half to three-quarters of the resolutions before general convention deal with not national news items.
Mm-hmm.
We get the stuff about revision of canons and sort of church internal politics, but the fun is in the discussion of free Abu Mumia Jamal, the Philadelphia cop killer, or end the U.S. embargo of Cuba,
Yep.
or we're pro-greenhouse gases, we're against greenhouse gases. Stuff that has absolutely no influence on the greater, wider world, but a bunch of people love to talk about it and debate it, and the church makes its decision, which actually is not even binding on anybody. It's just a decision of the moment at that day. None of that takes place at ACNA.
No.
And so ACNA is not as newsworthy as the Episcopal Church's meetings are, but they're much more reflective, refined, and frankly, they're a much nicer place to be.
Well, there's two main stories that you and I found coming out of the ACNA Assembly. First was they chose a new archbishop, which people have always said, listen, the ACNA is not going to survive the first year because they are nothing without Archbishop Bob Duncan as their leadership. He is the Moses of this generation. He's keeping all these cats together. And boy, as a person who's followed this for 5 years, 10 years, there's a lot of truth to that. Up until 3 years ago, without Archbishop Bob Duncan, this wouldn't have lasted at all. Because basically he was taking people who have left the church, who had an issue and left the Episcopal Church, and brought them back together. I don't think there's a time in history we've found a reunification of people who've left the church to form a new church, a growing church. And I've watched the struggles. I've watched... You and I were at Ridgecrest, George, where this women's orders thing came up, and there was a lot of tension in the College of Bishops, and
in the dining hall.
And in the dining hall, we listened to both sides, and we're like, "Whew, thank God, Archbishop Duncan is here to save the day." But the church has matured since then. I don't no longer need an archbishop to save the day of the Anglican Church in North America. There's a maturity that set in probably in about the last 18 months, George.
There's a confidence, there's a peacefulness. The Anglican Church in North America at its first meeting in Bedford, Texas, was a coalition of special interest groups. Today it's a church. Mm-hmm. It's a Catholic church, Catholic with a small c. It has many disparate elements, but there's a conscious sense that this is a viable, ongoing, godly denomination.
Yeah, it is. And they do have the elephant in the room type issues, women's ordinance or women's orders. But they know they're going to do this together. and they know that whatever decision the church makes on this, they do it as a body. And whatever decision they make, they'll respect that decision and honor it. And that was not truly there at Ridgecrest. It was faction versus faction, and it was kind of, unworthy of me to even watch as a Christian. That's come a long way. Another thing I really enjoyed was the interest they put into the catechesis.
That's an example of the forward thinking that is moving the ACNA into what I believe will be a very successful future.
Mm-hmm.
The time that they spent in a catechesis, what we believe and how we're going to teach it to people, has no real counterpart in any Anglican church that I'm aware of. Mm-hmm. Yes, we have a catechism in the back of the prayer book, but that is absolutely irrelevant to 99 and 9/10 of the lives of the Episcopal churches. Mm-hmm. By putting their time and effort, talent and treasure into a catechism that sort of sets the parameters of Anglican belief, they're being smart. That's the best way I would describe it.
Well, let's talk about the good then. The good is that they had a conclave. Now, I was a little wary of the process of a conclave. You and I have watched the Episcopal Church and all their many bishops and laity and clergy get together and vote in a person like Catherine Jefferts Schori. I was not sure how a conclave would work. And we got to see the struggle as we talked to these bishops as they came out of the conclave. They've held their secrecy, but they told us. One said it was like passing a pineapple. And he said, that's the hardest thing I've ever been through. And thank God let me be a part of it. And
Kevin, you're giving the PG version of what he said. But,
well, yeah, I mean, it's PG, but, and so all the bishops we've talked to about the conclave said the process was hard. It was wretched. But boy, it showed the unity and the love of the church and how the College of Bishops is working together in maturity. Now, we've been patting the ACNA on the back for the last, about 7 minutes. Now we're going to level some truth and love. They did a great job, but George and I came across the situation, and it's kind of made the commentaries around the blogs that, well, first I'll tell you what happened. At the end of the conclave and assembly, these exhausted bishops who spent many days in conclave trying to choose the next archbishop of the ACNA came out and were mentally exhausted. They were supposed to also have on the agenda choosing the next bishop of Western Anglicans. And they didn't have time to do it. They were exhausted. They said, listen, we need to put this off until October. What can we do in the meantime? And the meantime was to put Bishop Lyons as Vicar General. Bishop Lyons is an awesome bishop. He will serve very well as Vicar General. Well, George, Kevin, what are you saying? Well, we want to talk about the process of just putting him in as Vicar General, and that process was called a pastoral response. How did we learn about this, George?
Well, Robin Jordan, a commentator, posted an article on his website saying that the ACNA violated its canons when it appointed Frank Lyons as Vicar General of Western Anglicans. Vicar Generals may only be appointed for diocese information, Mr. Jordan pointed out. Well, I raised this question with the ACNA, and its press spokesman looked into it, and he came back and said, well, Jordan's right, but this was a pastoral response to a situation, and nobody's complaining about it but Robin Jordan. Now, that set off flares for me, and red flags and bells and whistles all went off. Not because of the appointment of Frank Lyons, who's a great guy, but this is an Episcopal Church of the USA practice of making it up as you go along.
Pastoral response, and it may just be us as reporters, because we've heard this so often in the past. When people didn't want to go by their rules, they would do a pastoral response. For the Episcopal Church, that was same-sex liturgy, same-sex blessing, same-sex marriage. It was Gene Robinson. I could go through a list of things that when you put pastoral response to equals this. We can go over to the Church of England and do the same thing. And it may be George and I just overreacting to those two words put together. Maybe it should be an oxymoron when we use that, but we want to be sure that the Anglican Church of North America does things above reproach. And I know that they don't like to hear criticism from Kevin and George, and this is more truth and love. You were a young church, you're now a mature church. The future of your church will be judged by being above reproach. And not having commentators like Robin Jordan point out little I's that are missing their dots and T's that are missing their crosses. So that's our hope for the future. It's a growing, mature church, but we want to be sure that it can be above reproach.